Hello and welcome to my project updates. When last you saw me, I was showing you my previous project, which was Flagon and Spade, I believe. And since then, I've cut that project in favor of something a little more traditional and slightly easier to do from an accessibility standpoint. This is Lute Fable. So I'll just briefly play the game, sort of show you all of the various mechanics I have set up in this little test world, and then I'll run through them one by one and show you how they all work. And this is essentially how I've been spending the last 2 weeks of my life. So this is the character. You can control him with W, A, S, and D, and you can fire with the left mouse button in any direction you so choose. And this is an enemy character example. So he will chase me and try and take swipes at me, and if I let him, he'll actually succeed and deal a bunch of damage to me. I can kill him by shooting my projectiles at him, and he'll die using a nice little animation, thanks to Paragon for that. So I've used a lot of Paragon assets for this project because I am not an artist or animator, I'm a designer. And that allowed me to collect all of those coins. I have a few pickups in this game. There's these various keys, which I'll not pick up for now. This bomb, so I can pick up a bomb and place a bomb by pressing the E key. And it'll tick down using this fuse and then play a nice little explosion animation. We have coins, which you've previously seen, and these just increment my little coin counter in the top left. And we have these potions. So the potions will actually update my health bar. The sort of bulbous round ones are instant health gain, and then the ones on the right, these square ones, are health over time. These numbers haven't really been adjusted. They're just a demonstration to show that the mechanic works. So if I roll over this, I'll instantly gain at least 10 life. And I have a little key on my keyboard just to damage myself to demonstrate these mechanics. And if I go over this, I'll slowly over time gain a certain amount of life. I'm not 100% sure how much it is. And then this works for all of the health types in my game. So I've got the blue health type, whatever that is. And I have this green health type, which is yellow because the asset was green, but I wanted it to be yellow. So at some point I'm sure I'll run into Photoshop and edit that. So I can actually pick up this to go to full health. 14 life, full health otherwise. So that just leaves us with the keys in terms of pickups, and I'll actually demonstrate what the doors do before I tell you what the keys do. So this is a door, lovely, beautiful asset here. And if I walk up to it, it will disappear and reappear. This is meant to show an opening animation, but I'm sure you'll believe me for now when I say that this is opening. And this is an unlocked door. So an unlocked door you can pass through whenever you would like, as long as it's unlocked. During combat, I imagine you would walk into a room. There's several doors on the edges of the room, but when you're fighting, the doors will all be locked, so you'll walk up to them, and they won't open like this. And now these three are key-locked doors, and you need specific keys to access them. In our inventory now, we have no keys, so we can't access any of these doors. I can pick up a key here. Still not able to enter any of the doors because you have to actually be holding the key use button in order to enter them. So if I approach the gold door and I press R, there we go, the door became unlocked. So I can do that with all of the doors if I so choose. Now this is the bronze door, but I have a silver key. If I press R, you'll see that nothing happens. But I can approach this door and open that one, and then I'll show you the last door, I suppose. Boom. And there we go, that's all of the doors opened. And then last but not least, we have the shop, and this is simply an area in which you can buy items in exchange for this currency here. So we have 54 currency, and our health is a little low, so maybe we could buy, this is a fairly cheap potion, it's 3. We have 34 gold, so we should go down to 31 in exchange for this health potion. And there we go. You see we're down to 31, and then we're gaining health. Not quite up to full, so perhaps we could buy another potion. So we'd go down to 27 for this potion here, and that just tops us up to full life. Lovely. And then maybe we could buy a key as well. We don't have any keys, as you can see here, and we have 27 gold, so it should take us down to 20 gold. Oh, that was 1, not a 7. My bad. It takes us down to 26 gold. I'm not that bad at maths. And we get 1 gold coin. Now, I was just trying to populate the loot tables for the shops. So for some reason, there are coins in here that cost more than 1 coin. So I think we go down to 21. There we go. We go down to 21. Lovely. I'm not sure why you'd make that purchase. And then we have a key here. Boom. We can't pick up any of these because they're either too expensive or free, but you know we don't have the we're full on the barrier to do that. So that's all the items in my game, and perhaps I'll demonstrate that you can't just buy whatever you want. So we have 0 gold here, and we can't pick up any of these keys or money. And then we'll just go grab these 2 coins over here. And then I believe, yeah, we'll just buy this key. Boom. So there we go. You can't just buy whatever you want. Oh, and let's, last but not least, show off the bomb. Can explode doors. So this little fuse tracks down. It plays a nice, lovely kaboom. And I didn't quite get this one in its radius, but I did get this one. And now we can pass through there. So that might be a mechanic in order to skip a particularly harsh fight. So I want the game to be about sort of balancing the resources you're getting. Maybe you want to try and kill enemies to try and get more, or maybe you want to try and skip some rooms to try and go faster, maybe increase your score via a timer bonus or something. So that's the reason for that mechanic. So now we'll go through everything, I suppose starting with the player character makes sense. And we'll just sort of get a brief overview of how everything works. Hopefully we won't take too long, because I know the last time I went kind of in depth, I ended up making a 40-minute video, which was not fun for my markers to sit through. So this is the scroll mechanic for the player, so you can scroll in there and get a nice good look of your character. Maybe you want to see them doing a particular animation. The way they spawn that ball is particularly impressive, and that's fairly simple to do. I've been playing Path of Exile recently, and you can scroll into your character and see them wielding the new armor that you picked up, so I thought that was a nice little juicy touch to add. Next in the player character we have use key for key doors. So there's just a variable here called overlapping doors, and it just keeps track of which door you're overlapping at the present moment, and then if you're not overlapping any doors, it doesn't have a value for that, and it just gets the display name and then switches on string for the display name. So if you're door key gold, door key silver, or door key bronze, and then based on that output, it either outputs one of these 3 things, which will de-increment the specific type of key that you're using, and then destroy the specific type of door that you were standing next to. So that's this mechanic where I pick up a silver key, approach the silver key door, press R, and it destroys the door, like that. We have the controller movement. We are placing a bomb, so you press E and then the bomb gets placed, and this is the bomb itself. So I'm actually fairly pleased with this one because it's the first time I've used splines, and they work kind of just how I expected, which was nice. I just have on the stem, on the fuse of the bomb, a spline roughly mapping out the path, and it doesn't have to be too specific because this is going to be a sparkle animation, not a sphere, so it doesn't really matter if it zigzags a little bit. In fact, that might be good. We just set the location of, in this case it's a sphere, but later you can see I'm playing around with effects here, but for now I've used the sphere. We set it to the top of the spline, and then over 5 seconds we set it to move to the bottom of the spline, and then after 5.1 seconds, I'm not sure why it's like that. Maybe that was for testing purposes and numlock isn't on. We add the particle system component, which is some explosion component I found in the Paragon assets. Then we set the bomb to invisible while it plays the explosion, so to make it appear as if the bomb has exploded. The sort of shell goes invisible, and then the shrapnel flies around everywhere. And then we just sort of check if if there are any doors in radius, and then destroy them. And I'm sure later we can have sneaking off of here deal damage to the player or the enemies or what have you. And then after the 1 second duration of the animation, we destroy the actor, which destroys the explosion animation as well. So we want to make sure that's finished before we destroy the bomb, but we set it to invisible just to elude the player that the actual bomb itself has exploded. So that is the bomb, and it just gets placed at the player location at a height of 200, which is the correct height for the bomb to appear to be sitting on the ground. So that's fairly simple. Then we have the firing mechanism, so this is all relatively simple. It's just every however long this projectile reload dictates, it allows another projectile to get fired. And the location of the projectile is at the actor location, which is the player character. The only sort of tricky thing is we have to select where to aim, so it detects whether or not the left mouse button is doing the aiming or not. If the left mouse button is doing the aiming, we just find out where the mouse is at the point of firing, and then we use this discriminator to plug it into this nonsense, and then that tells us what velocity we should give the projectile. But if the mouse button wasn't being clicked, we assume that the controller was being used, and therefore we use this controller magic, and then that just gets the shoot forward and shoot right vectors, or what have you, or turns it into a vector, and then plugs it into this. And this just resets the vector. Because I had an issue initially whereby if I was shooting further away from my player, like if I was clicking all the way up here in the far right hand corner of my screen, the projectiles were traveling incredibly fast, because that's of course how velocity works. And if I was shooting here, the projectiles were traveling very slowly. And so the projectiles were always ending up where my mouse was, which would give a really big advantage to players that play full scale out and then fire really far at the edge of the screen. Which of course we don't want to force a player to do anything necessarily, so you know, maybe a player wants to play sort of mid-zoom and sort of have their mouse sort of nearby their player so they can switch angles very quickly. And so I needed to resize the vector for that purpose. Here we have just setting up some stats and some widget stuff, so it's not particularly interesting. Although we will go into the widgets later. This is just the healing. So we have 3 types of health in our game, I'm sure you've noticed. There's the blue is called barrier, the red is hearts, and the yellow is armor. And so this is just how they are healed using the potions. So this is a tag that will be called from, we'll use this pickup hearts thing. So it just tells the player how much to heal and whether or not it should be destroyed. So from the potions that give an absolute amount of healing, like the round ones, which just give, I think, 10 or 20 healing, 20, there we go, they always destroy it. But the regeneration ones, they do not necessarily destroy, because the destroy command gets called a little bit further away. And it essentially checks whether or not the player is at full health, because if the player is at full health, we don't want them to be using up and destroying the potion, because they're at full health, they're not getting any value from it. And so this is what allows us to run over all of these without deleting any of them, but then if we take some damage, and now we're running over them and we're eating them all up. Because you wouldn't want to just walk over a health potion and destroy it, that's not how video games work. The regen is a little bit interesting, it just uses 2 timers in order to time things. Let's get the regen hearts. So this is how much it should heal over how many seconds, and then this command gets called this many times per second and for this amount of time, and this just sets this timer to run for this amount of time, and then when it does, it then clears both of the timers, thereby preventing this timer from ticking. And this timer just calls heal barrier, which of course is this heal barrier. Oh, and this is why we don't want to destroy the actor, because if we were to check this destroy token, it would try and destroy the potion every 0.1 seconds for 5 seconds, or whatever the value is set. So that would cause a lot of errors. So we don't destroy the actor when we're coming from here, but we do destroy it when we're coming from here, or coming from the potion, the absolute potion rather. So I have one of those set up for all of the health types, although I'm considering perhaps armor you can't regen over time, and barrier you can't heal instantly or something. That might be interesting. Add a little bit of rarity, maybe adjust the rarity values or the healing values. Of course, this is just to show that I can do it. And then this of course, what does this do? This adjusts the damage that the player takes. So first of all, we check if the player is dead, and if it is dead, we kill the player, and if they're not, we run through the barrier, then the armor, then the hearts, just to deplete them in necessary order. So this does all of that. And then we update the health in the HUD. So these are all done slightly differently because the health values are all slightly odd. Now I'm not sure if I'll stick with this, but the barrier is sort of over the top of both of them, and armor is kind of like thick skin, and then heart's like the inner epidermis, we'll say. But I'm not sure how much I like the system. But it essentially means that if I sort of start regenerating the wrong one, the hearts, they'll sort of both grow relative to each other. You see how the end is getting further to the right? So I thought that was would be visually interesting, but I'm not sure if the actual layout is that interesting. I'll have to generate some sort of trial Photoshop images and icons and then overlay them and see how that looks. And then last but not least, in the player, we have, this is irrelevant, we have just the thing that controls the inventory. So every time you overlap an item, it just calls one of these, which increments the count that you have for the relative item. So get key gold, it just increments key gold count, and then it destroys this actor reference, which is itself. So it'll destroy the gold key that you pick up. Because if we didn't have that, let's try it on a bomb. That'll be more visually interesting. Because all the keys look the same at the moment. So if we did that, we can just run over this bomb as many times as we like, and you can see this is incrementing, but the bomb is not going away. So we simply have this in order to prevent infinite resources. So that's the player character. Now we'll move on to show the other character in the game so far. I'm planning to add more characters as I go, as I find Paragon assets and implement them. But that's more of an end situation, because I'd rather get all of the individual mechanics working and show that the game sort of functions on that level before I add variety. So that's it's a sort of scope balancing mechanism where if I'm too low on scope, I can just bash out like 100 characters. But if I'm really, really high on scope, I can just drop the characters. I've got Boris, I'm fine. So this is roughly how Boris works. All of this is Paragon stuff. This is my own, and this up here is my own. So event begin play, I just make sure his health bar is all set, and his name is set. And then whenever he's dealt damage, I check whether or not he's dead. If he's not dead, I set his health to whatever his health bar is minus the amount of damage that's coming in. And then if he is dead, I set his health bar to 0, because I wouldn't want that going negative. And then I do once, stop all the logic, play the animation for death, and then after the death animation duration, I destroy Boris once and for all. And then Boris attacks is fairly simple. I just have in the viewport, I have these little boxing gloves on him, so I've got lefty and righty, and they're just bound to a bone on his hand. And so whenever the player overlaps with these under a certain circumstance, Boris has to be attacking, and he has to be doing the specific type of attack for his left or right hand. So these all coincide to provide a very narrow window in which the player can get hit. Because otherwise the player can get hit if he was just sort of like running alongside adjacent to Boris, which we do not want. Because Boris isn't swinging, and swinging involves claws, and just sort of like brushing up against someone doesn't hurt, I'm sure you can attest. And so he takes damage, and as soon as he takes damage, we set the right attack to be false. And so this means he can't take damage more than once from one swing or something like that. The same is true for the left attack. And then we just cancel the top-down character and we make him take the damage. Eventually I'll add like types of damage, so this might be like physical damage or fire damage. We'll see, but for now it's just damage. And that's sort of all I've done for Boris. I think I edited one tiny thing in the Heroes, Boris, and animation blueprint. Oh yeah, I remember what it was. Yeah, so this was set to, so is accelerating was, I can't remember what the specific thing was, but it made it so that his run animation never played. So he was just sort of T-posing aggressively at the player, which is almost more scary, but still. And so I set it to this is exceeding max speed. Let's just undo that. Which, and I set the max speed to 1, and this just means anytime he's not exactly stationary, he's running, which is fine for my purposes. I might try and see if I can get the walking animation to work, but I kind of just want him to always be an aggressive bear, so that's actually fine for my point of view. So that's all I've done with Boris, I think. We'll very briefly look at one of the keys. We don't need to look at them all. So all this does is, oh, actually we have the shop stuff I can show you. So when the player overlaps, it plays this get key bronze thing we've seen in the player before, which just increments the key count for the player and then destroys the key itself within the player. This is actually part of the shop, which I'll show you when I demonstrate the shop, so just assume this holds true for now. And this little element is in all of my items, and it just makes the items bob up and down and rotate nicely. So it just calls every so often and spins the player and adds world rotation, adds the rotation and adds the bobbing up and down using a sine wave. So that's nice. So that's in all of these items. It's not in the in these items yet because I can show you why. In the viewport, these assets, the center point is not centered to the assets, so when I rotate them, they rotate along this point instead. So it looks very janky. It looks like a ghost is sort of slowly carrying them, which is not quite the effect I was going for. The doors are fairly simple. They just, whenever the player is overlapping, they just set, where is this? It's where, oh, this is the regular door, my bad. The regular door just sets, it's either visible or uninvisible depending on whether or not the player is overlapping with the sphere thing here. And then the key door, which, there we go. Whenever the player is overlapping, we just set overlapping doors within the player to itself, and whenever it stops, we set the overlapping player to the player, because it's just an object that's always going to exist when the player is not overlapping with a door, I suppose. And that just means we can destroy the correct door when we have the correct key, etc., etc. Now the shop is a big headache and uses a few nodes that I've never used before, so that was fun to try. So we can take a look at the shop. And it's a little bit messy at the moment, but hopefully we can get through this. So first of all, we for each on the sphere components, and the sphere components are just laid out in this 2x3 grid, and these are where the items will appear. And unfortunately, you can't get the default scenery and do get child components, because this returns it in a really funky order. So I have to make an array of all of them in a very specific order, and then this allows for what you will see next. It's unfortunate that it doesn't work like that, because it would be really, really clean that you can do that, but it doesn't quite work. So then we add gameplay components to the actor, which is the shop, and these gameplay components are spawned in the location of these spheres, and the actors that are spawned themselves are stored in this array, which are the coins and keys and potions, etc., etc. And then we add a widget component to the actor that is spawned. So if it spawns a coin, for instance, it adds a widget component to that coin, and it sets the value of the widget component, which is, it sets the price variable stored within the widget component to this random integer range. This length of this array -1. So essentially, keys will always cost 1. Oh no, this is not how it works at all. My bad. There's a macro here, and the macro. This is the only way I can get it working for the moment. It just casts to all of them over and over, and I know casts are expensive, so it's a very bad way of doing it. Does the price? Oh, this is a random integer range. Yeah, I suppose that is how it works. And then it just returns. And for some reason, this macro only works when it's called after setting the price. I'm not 100% sure why that works yet, but I always try messing around with the order of things just in case that messes things up, and it does. So essentially this it has these 6 locations. It finds the 6 locations. It spawns one of the pickup actors at these 6 locations, and then it gives each of the pickup actors on spawning a widget component, which is it's very simple. Game shop price tag. It's just a text block for now. So it sits a text block on top of it, and then it sets its value to whatever it was called in the shop. So eventually what I'll do is I'll have specific ranges of value of prices for each item in the shop, probably stored in a separate array somewhere. But for now I just use this random integer range for this, which also picks the item in the shop. So I'm pretty sure all keys always cost the same amount, or all specific types of keys anyway. So that's how that works. And so I've never used one active gameplay task before. I've never used the add widget component, and it all works fairly smoothly. Unfortunately, I think this is the only way to do it, the cast. I think because you have to cast all of them to set the price. And you have to set the price so that you can prevent them from being picked up. I'll show you what price does. So remember this little element of our key bronze. So we check whether or not the player is overlapping with the key, and then when he does, we need to check if the player can afford the key. Now, by default, the key's value will be, the price will be 0, so the player can pick up any key by default. But if the key is generated by a shop, perhaps the key value is more than 0, so the shopkeeper can make a nice profit. And so we need to check if the coin count is greater than the price, or greater than or equal to the price of the coin, or the key, rather. And then if it is, we just set the coin count to be equal to coin count minus price, and then let them pick up the key, or let them destroy the key, which allows them to pick it up as well. And if it's not, we just pretend false, which doesn't do anything, so they just walk over the key harmlessly. So this is the mechanic that I'm demonstrating. So for instance, it costs 5 gold to pick up this key, which I cannot do, even though I can pick up these keys, which technically have a price of 0, so I can pick up those. But if we hopefully Varus is being nice and lets us pick up all of his stash, he is. Now I have 10 gold. My coin count is higher than the price of the key, which is displayed to us, and thus everything works and it's lovely. So that's roughly how the game works. I've sort of gone over all of the mechanics I built in over the last 2 weeks. Unfortunately, there will not be a download link this time because I'm using Paragon assets, which are huge, but I'll see what I can do next time. I'll see if I can delete some of the voice lines and stuff. Well, the deleting in Unreal is a little bit herky-jerky, so we'll see about that. But hopefully next time things will start looking a little bit nicer than this. I'll have every single one of my mechanics in, and I'll have the very first completely playable build that will start looking like an actual video game. So thank you for watching the full duration of this video, presuming you haven't skipped to this point in the video, and I'll see you next week.